Hello, I'm Charles Coves, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Coves Show, episode 171. Whether you're watching on YouTube, on Rumble, or listening via podcast on many of the platforms. I'm recording this one day after my birthday and one day after a massively failed referendum on changing the Constitution in Australia. Today's episode is indeed inspired by that massively failed referendum that was held on my birthday. Many labels have been thrown at people and are now being thrown at people. Plenty of negative labels are being attached to others because of the way that they voted in the referendum or thought about voting in the referendum. What do you do when someone calls you names or attaches their labels to you that you know are wrong? You know they don't tell the truth about who you are. In this episode, I explore the benefits of deeply clarifying who you are, of clarifying your strongest identity so that wrong labels don't stick on you. I discuss 5 specific steps on the road to finding your true and strong identity. And I discuss how to strengthen this identity so it resists ill-informed attempts to weaken you, to harm you, or to disable you. Our format for the show is that I discuss the big idea for the day, then I give you 6 resources to help you implement the principles behind that big idea, have a quick review of what's happened during the week, and there's some big happenings over the past week, and then lastly, for newer viewers and listeners, I discuss the foundational principles for this show and background details about who I am. So let's get into today's big idea. After yesterday's massively failed referendum in Australia to change the Constitution, there's need for lots of thinking. There are calls for the Prime Minister to resign. There are huge criticisms of the waste of time, effort, money involved in this referendum that was rejected by the Australian people 60% to 40%. That's a massive loss. As a consequence of that loss, many labels are being thrown around by the Aboriginal activists in particular. And indeed, prior to the voting day, those labels were being thrown around. On top of that are the dramas happening in Israel that cause other labels to be thrown around. What are these labels? You are racist if you don't vote a particular way. You are mean. Your behaviour is shameful to oppose the referendum. You are an anti-Semite. Or to take a view on a Seinfeld episode, you're an anti-dentite. That was one against dentists. Made me laugh, an anti-dentite. I don't think that's real. You are transphobic. You are homophobic. You are ignorant. You are an invader. You're a colonialist. How do you react to such labels? Do you feel they're harming you? I mean, you can also throw a label on me that I'm a coffee lover. I accept that label because it's consistent with my identity. I wouldn't, however, agree if you said I was a pedophile, because I'm not. How do you handle these inaccurate, abusive, sometimes hurtful, potentially hurtful labels? The answer is to clarify in your own mind and in your heart and in your soul who you are. When somebody says to you, who are you really? Can you answer the question? I've done a lot of work on this topic. I promise you I can answer the question. I don't want to take time answering that question, but I'm clear on who I am. When you are clear on who you are really, then labels that are thrown at you or attempted to be attached to you don't stick, because they're inconsistent with who you really are, because you know who you really are. You are like a huge rock, and what's happening is pebbles are being thrown at this rock and they simply bounce off. People can call you what they want. Those labels don't impact on you. You have confidence that is built on the strong frame of your clarity, of your true and strong identity. You have integrity because when you know who you are, you can act consistently with who you are, and you have a sense of integrity so that that integrity is able to resist external forces, external comments, external influences. You can pursue your passion because it's consistent with your identity, not subject to the views of others. You have courage to stand up for who you really are, rather than shriveling up in the face of labels, in the face of abuse, in the face of criticism. So, how do you clarify your identity? I have 5 simple but not easy steps, but I promise you they're simple. And if you start on them, then you'll enjoy continuing to develop these steps. Number 1, what do you know? What do you know? You've had a whole lifetime. What have you learnt as part of what you know? Second step, what are you particularly good at? What are your particular skills? Third step, what can you do? There's things that you know how to do. It could be gardening. You might not love it. You might not be a superstar at it, but you can do it. You can mow the lawn. You can drive a car. You can drive a tractor. You can play water polo. What can you do? Step 4, what type of person do you strive to be? In your mind, who is the type of person that you would like to be all the time? You don't have to be this all the time, but what is this person like that you strive to be the best you? And the 5th step, and you're writing out these 5 steps, how does the best you think and behave? When you are at your best, how do you think and behave? How do you handle your mistakes? How do you help others? Start writing out the answers to these 5 simple questions, simple strategies. Let's do a quick review. Number 1, what do you know? Number 2, what are you good at? Number 3, what can you do? Number 4, what type of person do you strive to be? Number 5, how does the best you think and behave? When you write out these statements, or first of all, they're bullet points, and then you write them out in a paragraph or 2 that is very readable, and you then focus on what you've written out, not on what you don't know, not on what you can't do, not on your bad behavior. You focus on these wonderful aspects of who you are and who you strive to be, knowing that you can be that person. You sometimes fail, you sometimes make mistakes, but you know what you're striving to be. You know who you're striving to be. Having that statement, reading it, focusing on it, meditating on it, builds your mental, emotional, spiritual muscle. You build this literally like a muscle. You build this incredibly strong, powerful presence based on this identity that then lets all of the labels, all of the abuse just bounce off. You might listen to somebody who says, hey, you made a mistake there. Wonderful. That's great feedback. That doesn't change your identity. And indeed, in my own thinking about my own identity, I have in there that mistakes are how I get better. They are not a destruction of my identity. They're part of my identity. So I don't beat myself up for making mistakes. I don't like mistakes, but I don't beat myself up. So it doesn't impact on my identity. I urge you to craft such an identity. So let's get to the resources that then help you build and be aware of the value of such an identity. My song for you from Les Miserables, Who Am I? Great song by Jean Valjean when he says, who am I? Can I condemn this man to slavery? Pretend I do not feel his agony. This innocent who wears my face, who goes to judgment in my place. Who am I? Can I conceal myself for evermore? Pretend I'm not the man I was before. And must my name until I die be no more than an alibi? Great, great questions. Who am I? Listen to those songs. Very powerful song when Jean Valjean is deciding whether to disclose to Javert, the police officer, who he really is. The book is a wonderful book by Kerry Spackman, The Winner's Bible. And it's a wonderful tool for helping to clarify your identity, who the real winner inside you is. My spiritual tip is that you meditate deeply on this question of who is the person that you strive to be. At your best behavior, who are you? That's the real you. Not the you that when you are in a tired, emotional, wrung out space and how you behave badly, that's not the real you. The real you who in your heart of hearts you strive to be. Meditating on that aspect is going to really, really clarify this powerful perspective of who you can be. My health tip, I want to remind you again of the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen, of double atmospheric oxygen. Why? Because research more and more is coming out that hyperbaric oxygen increases your own stem cell production by 800%. And Julie's been talking about Tony Robbins' latest research on the value of your body producing stem cells, of your body's ability to heal itself, to repair itself. Stem cells are such an amazing resource that God, the universe, has given to us in how our bodies function, but you need to give it the tools to enable those stem cells to be produced. My quote is from Albert Einstein. Try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. Try not to become a man of success, but rather become a man of value. And so a man of value is someone that you value. That's why your answer to that question of who are you? So I am a man of value. So how would that man of value be described? What is the most value that you can add? How do you become a man of value, a woman of value? And since we're talking about referenda, and politics and criticism and the whole game of politics, I thought, I love this very subtle piece of humor from Isaac Asimov's book. Might be relevant to what's happening to some people today. An old man was sitting on a park bench enjoying the late spring sunshine. When another old man sat down at the other end of the bench, they viewed each other cautiously, and finally one of them heaved a tremendous, heartful sigh. The other rose at once and said, if you're going to talk politics, I'm leaving. I love that subtlety and humour sometimes. I love dad jokes too, by the way. So, use these resources to use today's big idea to make a massive beneficial difference in your life of clarifying who you are, so that labels that are inconsistent with that identity simply bounce off you. You are not troubled by others imposing ideas on you, of calling you a racist. This idea today can make a massive difference to your life, which is the whole purpose of this show. My aim for this show is to provoke you, inspire you, motivate you to keep identifying the ways that you can make your life all that you want it to be. I invite you to subscribe to this show via YouTube, via Rumble, via the podcast. Perhaps Rumble's better because, YouTube is likely to deplatform me like anyone else for daring to speak some truth. You can discover more about the self-awareness and passion quest at my website, charlescovest.com, and public programs at covest.com. Share this show amongst your family, friends, and work colleagues if you find it to be beneficial. And you can access my first two books, Passionate People Produce and Passionate Performance, at both of those websites. Now, let's review some key happenings during the week, some really big deal happenings. Of course, the referendum I've talked about, that's going to have a very interesting impact on the dialogue in Australia, where more and more Australians, or a significant majority of Australians, have rejected the woke, leftist, victim game that's proposed, the increasing bureaucracy, increasing funding to set up new bureaucracies to divide a country on racist terms. Very interesting dialogue will come around. On TNT Radio yesterday, I interviewed Dr. Jake Baker, who is setting up a new blood bank so that you can have the type of blood that you want if you need a transfusion, if you're having an operation. There's a real problem with contaminated blood by jabs of you-know-what. The big dramas in Israel of the Hamas attack on Israel, the psychological operations that are happening. I don't buy the mainstream media. And what has to happen is humanity has to unite against the puppet masters trying to divide men and women. I look at the pictures of Israelis suffering. I look at the pictures of Palestinians suffering. I say we're being played by puppet masters. And what we have to do is humanity has to unite against the puppet masters, the globalist cabal that wants one world government, that wants the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, the people driving the alleged climate emergency agenda. There is no climate emergency. There is a soil emergency. There's a waste emergency. There's no climate emergency. And if you take away affordable, available electricity, you are condemning humanity to a massively deleterious lifestyle. Don't buy the bullshit. Yesterday in New Zealand, there was an election, and Jacinda Ardern, who I cannot abide, I think she's an evil, evil woman, shocking imposition on what she did to New Zealand. Her Labor government lost power. Wonderful outcome. Another big step was Bobby Kennedy Jr., who I have met on a couple of occasions personally. I've moderated meetings with him. It's a privilege to have met him. He declared that he's standing as an independent candidate for the 2024 presidential election. It's an interesting question on people who stand for president, including Trump. When people say, I don't like Trump, I don't like Bobby Kennedy because he said A or B. There is not a person on the planet, including me, who won't do things that you don't approve of. And we have to get over this idea that we're not going to vote for somebody because they've got a policy that you don't like. there are hundreds of necessary policies that are required to run a country. How many of them do you have to agree with? It's remarkable how complex this question is. And if you throw good people out because they're not perfect in your eyes, then what are you left with? And my last point of review is I saw a photo of Dictator Dan. I call him Dick Dan Andrews, former Premier of Victoria, the worst Premier in Victoria's history. He was flying into America. I believe he's going on a golf expedition. I want to hold that man to account for the rest of his life. I want all of you to track his movements and send me an email about those movements, because I don't want him to be able to go anywhere and to live peacefully, because he has to be held accountable for his corrupt criminal behaviour. I'm appalled by what's been allowed to happen in this state, and certainly the opposition in the parliament has to be held also to account for its failure to hold this dictator to account. The problem is that I assess 60% of Victorians had a great time under Dick Dan. It's the 40% that have been decimated, whose rights were trampled on, whose freedoms were trampled on. I want to hold Dick Dan to account. Lastly, in terms of reviewing the week, I'm delighted to have another birthday, had a wonderful family dinner, and at the same time, I'm continuing to look after my health, my mental, physical, spiritual health, and continuing to do the exercise. So I want you not only to build your mental and emotional muscle with your identity, I want you to build your physical capabilities and your health and do your exercise, because your body can renew itself. So it's a gift that we have, life. If you look after your body, you will be able to embrace this gift that we have been given, that you've been given, that I've been given, that Julie's been given. So if you're new to the show, stick around for the foundational principles of the show and further background about me. Again, thanks for watching or listening. And until our next show, may your week be full of passion, of embracing challenge, and of the experience of clarifying and building your own strong identity so you truly know who you are. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye. And now, for viewers and listeners who want to know more about my background and what else I do with my life, as well as the foundational principles of the show, here we are. Since 1993, when I left my legal career, a career that I love, to become Australasia's passion provocateur, I have inspired and provoked and educated and motivated people all over the world to discover and pursue their passion. I have helped people via the books that I've written, via speeches at conferences, via in-depth team building programs, workshops over 1, 2 or 3 days, or over 3 months, 6 months. And I've coached people of all ages, one-on-one, from small, medium and large enterprises, government enterprises, helping them to identify the often tiny changes that can make a massive difference. One of my core principles is that freedom is what makes us truly human. That's why one of the greatest threats that government imposes on you to force you to observe its laws is the threat of imprisonment, the loss of your freedom. Just think about that. Government says if you don't behave yourself, we're going to put you in jail. No, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to lose my freedom. That's a reminder to you of why freedom is so important. Without freedom, you and I are not much different to animals. If you were locked up in a cage for the rest of your life, how different would you be to an animal? This commitment to fighting for freedoms for all people is carried out by me primarily through 5 channels. Number 1, preserving the freedom to pursue your passion. Number 2, inspiring you to be able to be free through excellent health. Number 3, helping preserve freedom throughout the world through the expansion of industrial hemp, a magnificent agricultural crop, an almost miraculous crop that enables every community to thrive independently of government. In this way, the power of government to take away freedom is minimized. Number 4, fighting for freedom through legal strategies. So I do work as a legal strategy consultant, as an interface between clients and their lawyers. And number 5, as chairman of the Australian Institute of Comedy and as a board member of the Australian Cartoon Museum, fighting for the freedom of thought and speech through uncensored comedy and humour, through avoiding political correctness in the comedic space. When you block freedom of speech, freedom of thought, that's the beginning of the end of your freedoms. The foundational principles for the Charles Kovess Show are founded on the formula SA plus P equals S. Your self-awareness added to your passion will guarantee that you are successful. And the best definition of success I have found in life is that success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideals. The progressive realization of your worthy ideals. This show is also guided by Socrates' famous principle and quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." You can see I'm wearing my red jacket. I wear my red jacket for all my shows. Red is the colour of passion, so that when you see me on the YouTube version, it reminds you that when you see red in your life, you ask yourself the question, am I pursuing my passion? What am I passionate about? Am I still passionate about that? What might I newly be passionate about? Each week I explore one big idea that can change your life. And it's just one big idea because there's a chance you will remember it. If I give you too many ideas, then we get confused and we don't do anything. Clarity leads to power. Confusion kills passion. Each week I share simple and practical resources that you've heard me describe in the earlier part of the show. A spiritual tip, a health tip, lyrics of a song, a book, a quote, and of course humour. This show is not politically correct. I have no intention of being politically correct. And I love certain addictions, including my addiction to great coffee, my addiction to exercise, my addiction to reading, and my addiction to certain other unmentionable in public type behaviours. Who would know what they are? This show definitely subscribes to the view that we have a spiritual life. So if you don't like discussion of spirituality, this show is not for you. I promise you that I don't include anything in this show that I don't consider to be true and that I have not found to be useful in the work that I've done over the past 28 years, but also over the past 50 years in business, as a lawyer, as a consultant advisor. I only want to share stuff with you that is of value to you. Finally, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to contact me at charles@kovess.com. Again, thanks for watching and listening to my show. Bye.